I will be honest, when I was asked to speak today about the importance of parental self-care, my first question was, why me? Just full disclosure, I'm not a clinician. And as Sonia says, I am a family centered care coordinator at the Glenrose. It's a job I dearly love. It allows me to connect with families and work among a wonderful and caring group of clinicians. I am also a daughter to aging parents. I'm a wife to a self-employed husband, and probably most importantly, I'm mom of 3 adult sons, one who is autistic and will require significant care for his lifetime. I am not an authority on self-care by any means. As a matter of fact, early on after our son's diagnosis, I really wasn't that great at it. And much of what I will share with you today is a reflection on our family's experience. But one of the most valuable things I have learned through that experience is that self-care is not only important, it's necessary. So, as I said, not being an authority, I did some searching, and I came across the Oxford Dictionary. And after reading it, my first thought was, whoever was responsible for writing this definition didn't have any understanding of my life. As most parents, I focus on everyone else's needs, particularly my children's, before I consider my own. So no matter how you frame self-care, it really didn't resonate with me. It was just one more thing that I felt I had to do that I wasn't doing, and life was far too busy. We had 3 active boys to raise, and in those early days, we had so many decisions to make and so much to learn about autism. I was convinced that if we focused all our attention on the autism for those first few formative years, the remaining years would be so much easier, and other things were just going to wait. However, I learned that life is a marathon. I had a colleague that used to use this phrase a lot when he was talking with families, and I wish someone would have shared it with us in those early days after our son's diagnosis, because the learning, the teaching, the advocacy, the paperwork didn't end after those first few years. In reality, all of those extras as a parent that you do to ensure that your child has the needed and appropriate supports can be the biggest stressor. Autism is not always easy, but as his learning happens, it provides opportunity for celebration, and we celebrate the growth. Those extras that come along seem to be endless and repetitive and can really wear you down. In hindsight, maybe my naive thought that it would only be tough for the first few years was my first attempt at self-care for my heart and my spirit, until we figured out how we were going to live a life that we really weren't prepared for. And my searching continued, and this really caught my attention. We are all unique individuals. We come with our own medical histories, our own relationships, and hopefully we all have some type of support system. However, in my experience, especially in those early years, raising a child with a developmental disability became my full-time job. And let's face it, we all look forward to the weekend when we get time off from our job. But as parents, we don't get time off on weekends. Our son faced significant challenges in all areas of his development, and it occupied most of my waking thoughts and was a consideration in everything our family did and I did. So no doubt my stress level was at times a little like riding a roller coaster, and was probably quietly affecting my physical and mental health. Although I was never clinically diagnosed, I know I've experienced anxiety due to those extra duties I alluded to earlier, possibly, symptoms of depression, and definitely fatigue dealing with those stressors that have surrounded the diagnosis of autism and ensuring that those supports were there for him. I personally do not believe that autism is going to make or break my marriage or cause any marital problems. My husband and I are responsible for engaging in self-care for our marriage. And if we don't, I think it could falter under any stressful circumstance. So it's not to say our marriage hasn't taken a backseat at times, but we've also learned to become better at making it a priority. Our life has been very full and at times seemingly overwhelming, not just because of autism, but because in addition to the autism, life with 3 children, aging and ailing parents, a private business, and surviving on one income these days can make it difficult. Life changes, children grow and learn, and we all have challenges along the way. At various times, our focus had to shift between our 3 sons and their well-being. The one thing that remained consistent and constant was that our youngest son played into all of these situations, even if he wasn't the focus. We still had to consider how to manage and ensure his needs were met, even when our other sons needed our attention. As I said, it's a constant. And when others would see it wearing on me, my husband, my family, my friends, they would tell me, you need to take a break. Translation, I need to look after myself. I needed to engage in some self-care. It didn't feel possible. I think my standard answers was, yeah, right. When? How could I? It seemed counterproductive to all the priorities in our life. Truth was, I was so inundated, maybe even overwhelmed, that thinking of doing anything extra, even if it was for myself, felt like more energy than it was worth. This was probably also a sign that I needed to engage in some self-care. Now, self-care didn't always look like self-care. In the beginning, things that benefited my mind and body wasn't necessarily obvious to other people. It meant focusing on goals that would, yes, benefit my son, but also myself. And not things like speech and fine motor grip, more things like our son's sleep struggles. Because by addressing his sleep struggles, ultimately would allow me to benefit from a better night's sleep. Or once everyone was asleep and things were quiet, I could enjoy the peace and lack of demands. Another goal was his eating challenges. He was such a restrictive eater. I would have to provide 2 different meals for every sitting. And I would do that just to avoid the ensuing meltdowns. This made life challenging, not only at home, but also if we were invited to go elsewhere, and that involved having a meal. So this too also became a goal. Sometimes I volunteered at our son's school or at Autism Edmonton fundraisers. In my mind, this was time well spent because I was paying it forward and other people would benefit from it. So it didn't feel like it was something selfish that I was doing for myself. But then I realized it could be a social outlet. I began to recognize that these things had a positive effect on me personally, and I looked forward to the opportunity and became more comfortable taking time to focus on myself, my health, and looking for opportunities where I could focus on also my relationships with my spouse, my other sons, and my friends. Heaven knows that a lot of the things that I did probably wasn't worthy of a social media post, but it was beneficial. It took time to achieve our goals of a good night's sleep and easier meal times. But when we had done it, those were things that were daily stress relievers. I no longer had to be concerned about them. Taking advantage of time when our boys were in school or when they were sleeping made childcare less of a challenge, certainly, because the children were already in bed and nobody had to worry about entertaining them or what could possibly happen while we were gone. I would pitch in at a book fair or on a school field trip. I would work a late shift for a bingo or at a casino. Even now, a friend and I will work a 10 a.m. to 3 or 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. count room shift because it's our opportunity to socialize. We've coached our children's independence wherever possible, including our autistic son's independence. It's important to help him prepare for his future, but it also frees up more time for me and for us. And when available, we've utilized the supports we had for respite so that my husband and I could go on date nights or even a 24-hour date night where we would book a local hotel room and had trusted respite staff stay in our home versus uprooting our son. And we continue to take advantage of these opportunities, but realistically, those opportunities ebb and flow. Remember, it doesn't have to be elaborate to be beneficial. For example, I've set up a paint night for myself for my own enjoyment, and just set things up alongside of me so that my son would join in if he wanted to. I would sit there and I would focus on my canvas and what I was doing, and he was doing his own thing. And I made an effort not to think about it as him following instructions or him doing a certain way, rather more for the enjoyment of doing the activity. I've had friends over for coffee, and instead of going out, and my son has got iPad time so that I can enjoy the social interaction with a friend. Maybe it's a glass of wine or coffee on our deck while he's in the backyard playing or occupying himself and digging in my garden or other activities. Our family has had movie nights at home. I mean, lights off in our TV room, theater junk food. We've done s'mores over a barbecue when we couldn't go camping. We fit in a walk in our neighborhood or a hike in our river valley near our home at least 5 to 6 times a week. And I find that the fresh air is so invigorating just to get out into nature and take a break from any stressors that you may have at home. We have yoga and dancercise videos, and we do those regularly. Sometimes I'm on my own, sometimes my son joins in, and no lie, I felt a great sense of accomplishment when I reorganized my linen closet. It doesn't sound all that fashionable or anything glamorous, but it had been nagging at me for years, and I was actually euphoric when I got it done. I was bringing all my son's students and showing off my work. They thought I was kind of strange, but I was very proud of myself. And it filled me up. It made me feel good. I think if there is one positive takeaway from COVID over this past year, is that activities have become more virtually accessible to all of us. And therefore, we have more options for self-care within our reach that can be accomplished at home. Respite and taking a break is crucial. And when our sons were little, grandparents were our babysitters for the odd date night. I realize not everyone has family available to them or capable of caring for their child. And we are in the position where that's no longer available to us either. I know a couple of families, both have kids on the spectrum, and they support one another. They trade evenings, cover for one another over work trips, and watch each other's kids during vacations. Some families even take respite staff on the family vacation with them to lighten their responsibilities and to provide downtime for the parents. Our son has attended camps, summer camp for kids, now for young adults who have developmental disabilities, which he thoroughly enjoys. And this side bonus is that it gives us a 5-day break, which we use as a mini staycation for ourselves. Respite staff have attended summer camps with our son when he's needed support. And we've had church members offer to support him in Sunday school. Those and school EAs have become part of our in-home respite teams. To aspire to a break away from home, we rely on non-familial supports. Over time, we've been able to build a respite staff with funding from Family Support for Children with Disabilities and now Persons with Developmental Disabilities. We make the effort to hire respite staff with the thought that ultimately we will be taking time away from our parenting responsibilities to re-energize ourselves. Initially, it's a date night. Then it's a 24-hour respite period. And then we take the big step up and we go on vacation as a couple. In the beginning, it was just for an extended weekend, and now we're able to get away for longer trips. We have different respite providers that we call on for different occasions. Some support us if for short periods of time. Some are willing to move into our home and support our son while we're gone over the course of a few days. Sometimes we've had to be creative in our scheduling to make this all happen. And it's not like we just pack up and go. We leave instructions, we set up entertainment and meals, those things that make it easier on our staff while we're away. It's a busy week before we leave, I'll admit to that, but it is so worth it when we're able to get away and re-energize ourselves. As an aside, even when we hadn't had a therapeutic services contract with FSCD, we did have a respite contract, and we had a vision for how we were going to use that each time it came up for renewal. So that's just a thought I want to plant. Where we see ourselves, or where we find ourselves now, it was an evolution. It wasn't always easy, and it challenged my guilt because I was convinced if I left, everything would fall apart in my absence. Our first taste of self-care for my husband, myself, and our marriage was when our sons were in elementary school. And without my knowledge, my husband planned an extended long weekend getaway for the two of us. I was so hyper-focused on what we were trying to accomplish in home, I never even noticed what he was doing. He realized we needed a break. And so certain was he that I would not agree to take that break, that he had lined up respite to look after our sons. He had booked plane tickets so I could not back out, and had everything planned a month in advance. He handed me a written note. He didn't even tell me. And I cried because not only was it so thoughtful of him, but honestly, more because I knew I couldn't say no. I was going to have to go on this trip, and the thought of leaving scared me. That time and a few more times after that, if my husband and I went away for a short trip, I would cry as I left the house. Maybe that was an indication of really how much I needed that break, but was just too afraid to take it. It's not always easy, but the positive effects of investing in self-care for myself and our relationship have been undeniable. We acknowledge we need the time for our physical health and our mental well-being. And let's face it, we're not getting any younger. I haven't found that magic pill yet, so I have to look after myself. We recognize that it relieves our stress, rejuvenates our spirit, so that we can handle our unique life and any stressors that come our way. I remember years back catching myself laughing. It felt odd, like it was something that I wasn't used to doing, and that was because I hadn't been. Self-care has made my mood lighter, provided me more energy, made me more available to do the things I need to do for those I care for. I think I say yes more often than I say no. I smile more, I laugh more, and I entertain loftier goals for myself and my family that I wouldn't have considered in those early years when I didn't practice self-care. And without a doubt, it has made myself, my husband, our family resilient during periods of hardship and intense challenge. And we have had and continue to have our share of those. I borrowed this image from Pinterest. I love it. The links came from an internet search, in all honesty. They would have come in so handy when I didn't have the motivation, let alone the energy, to think of something to do for myself. And here, somebody has laid it all out for us in black and white. Any of us, I think, can find 5 or 10 minutes in a day to do something for ourselves, even if it's after our kids are in bed. There are so many posts and links like you see here now that show you how to engage in self-care versus just telling you to do it. And this is a fraction of what's available out there. Take a look around and find something that resonates with you. I encourage you to take advantage of your opportunities in your day, no matter how small they may appear to be. I encourage you to start caring for yourself early, for it feels like it's one more thing you have to do or that you need it. If you feel like you're juggling priorities and maybe not being able to give your best to any one of them, take the first step of scheduling 5 to 10 minutes for yourself and build from there. Commit to doing something to benefit your physical, emotional, spiritual, mental well-being. Ask for support so that you can have a break. If resources are limited, seek respite services through FSED or PDD and their approved service providers. There are agencies out there that provide one-to-one support for caregivers who are feeling stressed, as well as opportunities for caregivers to connect with one another. I have always said that other parents are the best resources because they get it, they live it, they understand it, and they're often willing to share their own experiences to benefit others. So you may consider seeking them out if you need ideas or support to just get yourself started. In closing, I leave with you a question. If you haven't already, what will you do for yourself today? Thank you for your attention, and I appreciate the opportunity.